So it's important for you to be flexible enough and agile enough, and you have a courage and commit yourself to try something different. Because life, you never know that what happens next. Viola-san, next speaker, is or probably can elaborate on that a little bit more. So I'm going to invite Viola to talk.
That was actually a really lovely segue, Sawaki Sensei, because actually that was exactly what I was going to talk about. I think what I'm going to talk to you guys about is really a lot of what Kim and Tammy's already touched on. Basically, I think Kim described the holy grail of the health sciences, and I was exactly that student. I was the student who was sitting there, and I was the one who won multiple General Excellence Award, and actually I was the one who won the Japanese prize in our year. In year 12. Then I ended up doing medicine. So I did reach the Holy Grail. And I guess what I wanted to really have a chat to you about today is all the things that I did wrong to get that Holy Grail. And really at the end of the day, shit does happen. And what you think the Holy Grail is not actually, the real Holy Grail. I did a lot wrong, I guess, during my time. And, obviously all you guys are sitting here because, you're all very intelligent people who, knows how to study and knows how to, answer the right questions to be where you are today. But I guess, I'll tell you a little bit about how, miserable I was, kind of reaching this Holy Grail. But basically, when I was sitting in your position, a lot of the decision making about, what subjects, you would choose and what uni degree you would do, and then from then on what jobs you would get. And I spent a lot of the time just sitting there thinking about, what it would, coming from an Asian background as well, and from a family who obviously valued, professionalism and academic stuff, a lot. I just kind of stepped back and, that's what people expect me to do, so I'll do it. So I chose all the subjects that people tell me to choose. I chose the uni course that people told me to do. And it ended up in, the University of Melbourne doing medicine. And basically the second day into my uni course, I knew I was going to be spending the next few years very miserable. It wasn't where I wanted to be. And then so I kind of grumbled my way through 6 years of med school. And then, so when I graduated, then the time came, I was like, well, what is going to do next? And obviously everyone around me, family, friends, whoever it was, careers advisor, well, you've done 6 years of med school, the most rational choice must be, become a doctor. Because that's what you do, that's what's expected of you, and that's what the normal thing would be to do. So that's what I did. I got a job as an intern. Intern year ended, and then suddenly it was like, well, then what next? I was still miserable, unhappy, didn't really like what I was doing, it wasn't a thing for me. But then the question came up, the bosses liked me, I was pretty good at what I did, and they were like, well, Viola, you can't stop now, because you'll never be able to get what you want, if you stop now. No one quits, takes time off and come back and get to, whatever specialty they want to do. So then I did another year. And by the time that happened, that's, 7 years down the line from me finishing high school, I was burnt out. And I was miserable, I was unhappy, and I was, basically spending a lot of my days doing something that, was not very meaningful to me at all. And so I quit. And despite the absolutely crippling anxiety, fear that created in the first few weeks, I can tell you that, it was probably one of the best decisions I made in my life. And so for the first time in my life, regardless what, whatever, family members, friends, or, careers counsellors, bosses, teachers, or, what societal expectations were, I was, for the first time ever, very free to do whatever I want. And I realised that, one of the things I think Sawaki Sensei mentions a lot, it's all about the journey. And that's exactly what it was. I realised that I had spent pretty much my life not really thinking hard about, what it was that I wanted to be and who it was that I wanted to be and what was actually important to me. And I think, we are very much in a society where, we get taught to answer very, questions really well. We get structured to go to classes, we get taught how to, do calculus, we get taught how to write essays. But what I think, we don't get really taught well is to, you know, I think like you mentioned, think about, you know, yourselves and what values are the ones that you know, are important to you and what it is that matters to you the most. And so basically after I quit, I spent that year just doing really random things, you know, doing weird things. Like I went away and, you know, got bitten by random insects and, you know, did weird things like taxidermy and, you know, took up random art classes, which my parents were completely, you know, unhappy about because they thought I had no purpose. But really it gave me the time that I need to really reflect on myself. And so going back, you know, obviously, you know, like Sawaki Sensei, you know, the theme was change, and, you know, it was within that year that I, you know, really kind of found some direction for myself. And I think, you know, if there was one thing that I would really encourage you guys to do is to really take that time out for yourself and think about, you know, what it is that is important to you and where it is that you want to go. Because, you know, the Holy Grail is not getting 99.5. The Holy Grail is not getting into medicine. The Holy Grail is not getting into law. The Holy Grail really is making your own path and, you know, and being able to be, you know, going on your own, you know, being grateful for everything that comes along your way during this journey. And for me, so after that year, I took some time off. I realised that, you know, regardless of, you know, what it was that people wanted me to do, the things that were important to me were to be able to, you know, think things through, talk to people and to connect with people, which is also, you know, things that Kim and Tammy had, you know, talked about. And I realised the way that I could, you know, contribute back was probably to use whatever skills I already had, and to, you know, find another means of, you know, applying those skills in a way that was meaningful to me. So basically, in terms of my medical career, I went from being a surgeon who basically just fixed bones all day to becoming this person who spends most of the time talking to people so that, you know, they can find means, you know, for themselves to go through this journey. And, you know, and I guess, you know, if there's another thing that I think is really important, like what I think Kim touched on a little, is, you know, it's really important to look after yourself in the process. Because, you know, all of yous will, you know, in the next few years, whether it is, you know, you're just starting high school now, starting, you know, MacRob now, whether you're heading off into university or, you know, other vocational, you know, things that you want to do, that there will be struggles along the way and there will be lemons thrown at you, and most of you will be able to cope through with these struggles, but there will be some of yous in the crowd who will find it difficult to cope on your own. And it is really important in those times to look after yourselves. And I think there's two important things, you know, in looking after yourself. One, I think, is to have really good people around you. And I think, like Kim and Tammy mentioned, you know, the people sitting next to you in the room now are probably some of those most important people. And the other thing I would suggest is, you know, I was really lucky to have met a few good mentors along the way while I was struggling through, who kept me grounded when things were really, really tough. And, you know, if you are lucky enough to meet those people along the way, you know, keep in touch. Or like Kim said, be weird, you know, make those cold calls and just talk to people. Because a lot of those times, those people are the ones that, you know, unexpectedly turn out to be, you know, some of the most important people in your lives. And the other thing is that, you know, obviously some of us are lucky to have family and friends and mentors that we can talk to. But at the same time, you know, it is difficult, you know, being that vulnerable person that, you know, talks to those, you know, people who know you that well. And there is professional people out there who can provide that role if you know, don't want to burden your friends, or you don't, you know, feel like you're ready to share those really, you know, deep and meaningful things with people who are really close to you. And I think it's quite timely that, you know, it is actually Mental Health Week this week. So there is a lot of good companies, not companies, but good, you know, support services like Headspace who will, you know, help you in that sense if you don't feel like you can approach anyone close to you. And I guess, you know, for me, where from now, you know, and even though, you know, I might still be a doctor, but, you know, for me, this is not it. This is just part of, I guess, the next step towards something new. And to be completely honest, you know, I'm eagerly awaiting, you know, the next step where I can actually, you know, take another pause and do something else new and challenging altogether again. And you know, to be honest, and I don't think, you know, that would be a doctor actually. Yeah. Yeah, woohoo! Yeah. So is there any questions or? I just quit. I just basically told them, you know, I've had enough and I left. Yeah. Yeah.
So what are you doing for class now?
So I'm a trainee psychiatrist now. So I spend my days, you know, talking to people who are mentally unwell. Yeah. And trying to help them in any way that I can.
So you're studying still?
Yes, so I know on the bio I said a professional student, which is exactly what I am, because, you know, I basically, you know, spend all my day studying, still doing assignments and exams. But I think the difference with what it was, you know, during uni days and during high school, what it is now, is that, you know, this is self-driven. You know, this is the stuff that I do want to study, and it's not about, you know, what other people think I should do or what other people, you know, think would be good for me. This is, you know, learning because I'm interested, because I care. And I think that's, you know, an important difference to have. Yeah. Look, it wasn't the right fit for me. You know, I think there's definitely, you know, I mean, it's not that I'm against medicine per se, but I think the key thing was that it wasn't the right fit for me. You know, I was never one who was interested in biology or whatnot. You know, I was always, you know, enjoyed more abstract things like, you know, English literature and Japanese and kind of philosophy and all that sort of stuff. And I kind of dropped all those things that I actually had enjoyed, you know, with a view of, you know, maximising my inter-score, which, you know, in hindsight, you know, was definitely not the best thing to do. Yeah. I luckily have a very good set of friends, both that are in the same field and both not in the same field, who I can talk to and debrief with. And I think for me, it's really important that you have other interests outside of those things, because, you know, it's always going to be a compromise. Obviously, there are certain things that we need to do to get to where we want to be. And you know, like Sawaki Sensei says, you know, unfortunately the VC exams is one of the hoops that we have to jump through. And it's about being able to balance, you know, that compromise of, you know, investing enough in that so that you're, you know, maximising your potential of doing what you want to do, but at the same time, you know, still having enough room so that you are still doing things that might not be valued as importantly in terms of what society sees, but it's still, you know, personally, you know, important to you. And I think it's about finding that balance. So for me, you know, on a practical level, I spend quite a bit of time, you know, reading things that I enjoy reading, which is completely non-work related. Occasionally I dabble in, you know, art classes and things like that just to, yeah, debrief.